Welcome to Psychological Mind Control Hacks for Salesmen, Part 3. Now, this is going to be the last part of this current series, either on Facebook or on YouTube, at least for now. And next week, we're going to look at some other things. In Part 1, we looked at some techniques that you can use to control and direct your prospects' thoughts so that their decision to buy becomes subliminal. And you can get underneath their level of consciousness and affect their thought processes without even being aware of it. And we looked at how people like to blend in with the crowd, how people like to be totally obedient and told what to do, how people like to get your foot in the door, how people hate stuff that's incomplete and not finished, how utopia means never having to admit you're wrong, and how people love to conform on an emotional level. Then we looked at how people need satisfaction, and finally we looked at uncertainty. Then last week, as we went deeper into the psychology of sales and marketing, we went on the attack and we saw how an impending disaster is the mother of all invention, and how a great way to win a war is to remain undetected. And we talked about how to use deception to avoid the delete key, and I made the point very strongly that deception wasn't around deceiving people by false advertising, but in terms of disguising yourself when you're in their environment, how to kick your opponent when it hurts, and finally, how seeing is believing. Now, today we're going to finish up the series, and this time it's all about you and not your prospect. Things that you need to get your mind wrapped around if you want the edge when it comes to sales and marketing. But before we get into all that stuff, I want to give anyone that's watched any of this video series and that wants it a one-year subscription to my monthly e-newsletter, Flight Manifest. That's a $180 value, and I want it to be yours. There's no strings. I just want to give it to you because I'm so delighted with the response that I'm getting to this video series. Let me tell you why I'm doing that. An average of 126 of you watch my live presentations, and I want to keep sharing with you on a different platform. And the only problem is that I don't know who you are. So take a moment now, put a message in the comments. I'll get back to you. You can give me your email address privately, and we'll automatically send the newsletter to you free of charge for the next 12 months. Anyway, as you start putting the comments in and all that good stuff, then let's get on with today's teaching. Psychological mind control hack number 15. I've called this how to keep the engine turning over. Day by day in our online world of sales and marketing, the challenges get more and more demanding. So how do we keep ourselves equipped for the task? Well, this is a critical question in an era when business never stops. I was talking to a neighbor the other day, and he trades foreign exchange for his own personal account. And I told him 20 odd years ago, I used to do that for a living professionally, not for my own account, but for institutions. And the world of foreign exchange never stops. You know, it started at about 8, 9, 10 o'clock London time on a Sunday night, and in Australia, and then the energy, the green line, if you like, moved from Australia through the Far East, through Europe, ended up in America, and then went back to the Far East. And so things went quiet at about 8 p.m. London time on a Friday night. And I remember I used to have one of these little pages that gave me continual real-time foreign exchange prices. And I even used to sleep with that thing under my pillow. It was business that never stopped. It's pretty much the same way today if we don't control it. Now, I remember a time not so long ago when I thought I'd got it made. I was living a digital lifestyle. Home was and still is an oceanfront condo, and I had more clients and business some days than I knew what to do with, but it all came at a price. See, I woke up one day and I realized there's no point in living on the ocean if you have no time to go out and enjoy the ocean. There's no point in living at the beach if you have no time to go walk the beach. And I found myself running my business almost every waking hour, but it was like going back to the foreign exchange days, and quite frankly, I was worn out. And paradoxically, the busier I got, the longer it took me to achieve anything. Copy took longer to write. Funnels took longer to design and build out, and leads became harder to generate, and people became harder to coach somehow. And my mental creativity and productivity became inversely correlated. I needed some time off. Now, one of my solutions, and I stress these are my solutions, one of my solutions was to stop working from mid-morning on Friday through Monday morning. I needed some time away. And we all need to learn how to stay energized for the job at hand. And that doesn't mean living on multiple cans of Red Bull or Monster drinks on the hour every hour. My friend Jim is a local realtor, and he's an extremely successful one at that. And we met at a Chamber of Commerce Leads group in Central Florida a few years back. And Jim and I became friends, and that led to us hanging out for coffee or lunch every week or so. In fact, Jim became my first realtor client, but that's a whole different story. Now, in his first career, Jim was military. Amongst other things, he was Coast Guard, and he was a military sharpshooter, and a lot of his missions were classified. But one conversation over coffee and donuts, because Jim really likes his donuts, I particularly remember was about the tactical life in uniform. What Jim told me that day over the coffee and the donuts was a very important lesson that I've never forgotten. See, Jim told me that there are two different types of soldiers. There's what he called garrison soldiers, and then there's field soldiers. Now, a lot of military personnel obviously perform extremely well in a garrison environment, meaning back home on base with hot showers and regular meals and all sorts of things and activities to do when not actually on duty. But when they come out of the base environment and get out into the field, it can be a completely different story. And too many times a soldier would just break down or cease to function, or as Jim says, put him out in the field and he'll go from man to a bitch in half a day. Now, there's a lot of negative stuff about being out in the field that's going to get to you. The absence of everything you took for granted back at base at the barracks, the dirt, the lack of showers or latrines, the horrible food, the lack of sleep. And when you're living and operating out in the field, it's difficult to keep your energy levels high. And energy levels are critically important if you're on active duty. Now, here's the paradox. The US military has recognized that sleep is a combat multiplier. There's a phrase for you. I'll say it again. The US military has recognized that sleep is a combat multiplier. That means they proved that getting more sleep allows anyone, not just soldiers, to get a much greater amount of work done in a shorter amount of time. And anyone forced to work longer with less sleep is going to get less work done than his counterpart who's working shorter hours and getting more rest. In other words, happy, rested, and well-filled soldiers fight better, period. And it's exactly the same in the business world. The tempo of e-business and marketing is breakneck, and it's getting faster rather than slowing down. And I've proved over and over that by religiously taking time away from my laptop and my phone, it increases my productivity exponentially. On a typical day, my routine is now I wake up naturally at about 5:30, 5:45, and then I'll start work at about 7 a.m. And usually that means I'll be on the phone working with a client. I'll stop for coffee with my friends or neighbors from about 10 till 11 or 11:30, and then I'll be back in front of my computer until sometime between 1 and 2 p.m. And that works out on average somewhere between 5 and 6 hours a day. After that, the focus becomes the swimming pool or the beach or which restaurant I'm going to go eat dinner at. And so there's 5 or 6 hours a day, absolute maximum, and that for 4.5, 5 days a week. So maybe 25 hours or so a week, and I get everything done and then some. And could I work more? Yes. Are there people that want to deal with me that I don't take on as clients? Absolutely. But I don't want to work more than those few hours a day. My life, the quality of my life is more important to me. My rest time, my relaxation time, my fun time is what energizes me to maximize my impact in those hours that I'm actually working. Now, to get to that takes organization and it takes discipline. For example, I talked about getting away from the phone. Well, I did that quite simply. People can't just call me up because they don't have my number. In fact, very few people have a cell phone number that they can call me direct on. New clients book a call with me via my appointment setting service. And I got to say, that's the best $10 a month I spend, by the way. Existing clients send me a message in real time, usually use either Skype or Facebook Messenger, and I'll reply. Maybe I'll just give them a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and I'll either deal with their question if I have time, or I'll let them know I'll get back to them. But they always know that they've been heard, that I've noticed them, and they know that if I say I'll get back to you in an hour or two, that I always will. See, until I changed how I work, I had no idea I could get so much stuff done and so quickly. And so today there's a whole new pace to my business that I never had before. And I suspect that's the way the world's moving too. You and we have to keep up. And those that can't keep up with the pace of business in an online world are the people that are clearly going to fail. So like it or not, internet marketing or online business happens lightning fast. And it's not about to slow down for you or for me. And you need to learn to embrace its speed. So to prepare yourself for this pace, you have got to take care of yourself. That means you've got to get more rest. That means you've got to work fewer hours. And I promise you, when you do, the hours that you do work will be so much more productive. Here's the absolute truth. People function more effectively when well rested, well taken care of, well fed and fit. The sales application is this. In a fast-paced world of online sales and marketing, being competitive means keeping yourself in top shape, emotionally, mentally, and yes, physically. And it means keeping your energy levels continuously high. You know, if you don't do much formal exercise like me, even if I go and take a walk for 20 minutes, it's amazing how much more energy that gives me for the rest of the day. What's the specific action that you can take? Well, discipline yourself to stick to a strict schedule. Limit your work hours. Give yourself ample rest on nights and weekends and keep a log, and I guarantee your performance will improve. And, you know, one of the questions I often get asked by people that I'm working with one-on-one, well, how do I discipline myself? How do I get a timetable? I said, it's kind of simple. Take a piece of paper, draw it into 7 vertical columns and 24 horizontal lines, so one for every day of the week. That gives you 168 squares. Same for you as it is for me. Block out all the time you're not available to work. That means the time you're going to sleep, the time you're going to go on a date night, the time you're going to spend with the kids, the time you're going to do this, the time, all the things that you want to do or that you maybe need to do because of your family commitments or whatever that might be. If you're into soccer like I am, I block out time every Saturday to listen to a soccer match. It's what I do. Whatever you want to do for fun, whatever you want to do for relaxation, timetable it, block out those times on that weekly timesheet, and then guess what? Everything that you have left is the time that you should devote to work. That's how you discipline yourself. Block out the fun stuff, block out the family stuff, block out the stuff you want to do, block out the time that you're going to hang out with the guys or the girls once a week, block out the time you're going to sleep, block out the time you're going out for dinner at the local restaurant, block out whatever you want to block out, but make sure that the time you don't block out, you actually discipline yourself and you do actually work without interruption. And if you don't have enough time for work, maybe you need to cut back on some of the other activities that you're blocking out. All right, here's psychological mind control hack number 16. Pick the battles that are worth fighting. Only a fool chooses to fight every battle that comes his or her way. In one of my favorite books, we've talked about it in the last couple of weeks, The Art of War, Sun Tzu put it this way: when doing battle, always seek a quick victory. A protracted battle will blunt weapons and dampen ardor. Now, if you like history, which I do, history tells us that there was a Greek leader called Pyrrhus, and he led 2 very successful conflicts against Rome in 280 and 279 BC. And in 280, he totally obliterated the Roman garrison at a place called Heraclea. And he did exactly the same thing a year later at another place called Asculum. Now, the problem that Cyrus had, though, was that those 2 battles left him with a very, very heavy casualty list, and it severely weakened his army. That's where the term Pyrrhic victory comes from. It means a victory that you win, but that comes at great cost. So what do you gain if in winning, the losses you suffer mean you can't fight the rest of the war? In sales and marketing and business in general, you have to keep asking yourself the question, is this fight that I'm currently fighting worth it in the bigger picture? I'll give you an example. Those of you who know me well know that I have a natural disdain for most things SEO. Take search engines, for example. Now, I know that search engines can be a great source of targeted traffic for your website, but the problem is many small businesses get greedy and they think that if I spend or they pay somebody to spend a great deal of time on search engine positioning, that's going to open the doors to enormous success. That's a major thinking error, in my opinion. See, I see people week in, week out using a great many innovative techniques to get a high placement, a high ranking on Google or the various search engines. And yes, sometimes they are successful, but usually not in the long run. It ends up not being worth the time and the money they invest. And let me tell you a few reasons why that's the case. Search engines are constantly changing the rules, their ranking algorithms. Google does it every 4.5 to 6 months. And I found that if I was doing SEO for somebody, it might take 3, 4, 5 months to get the ranking working, to get all the backlinks, all of that good stuff done. And so that the client started ranking on the first page of Google. And then what happens? You get to a high ranking today, then Google changes its algorithm, and you may be back in 4,000th position by tomorrow. All of that hard work might suddenly be for nothing, because then you have to start all over again. Submit the same content too many times or do it too often, and the search engines might even ban you. And again, your hard work may go straight down the drain. And getting that high ranking or that number 1 ranking probably won't deliver the flood of traffic that you imagine it will, or that somebody's promised you or persuaded you that it will. Hard work, once again, gets squandered. There are many other far simpler marketing tactics that will give a greater return on investment with far less efforts. Now, I've got nothing against SEO. In fact, I wrote a book on local search engine optimization. So I do know a little bit about the topic, and you can get a copy of that book for free. Just download it from my Patreon channel, patreon.com/Starship Academy. And yes, there are a few people out there who've truly mastered the art of search engine positioning, and they do it very well, and they make a good living for themselves. But I do think they're also quite rare. And I am not one of them, so don't ask. Yes, I can. No, I don't want to. I see too many people spending long, long hours fighting a search engine war only to see their efforts bearing little, if any, fruit. But here's the point I want to make. Let's look at the concept of a quick victory. And I'm just as guilty as this as any of the rest of you. Have you ever worked on that one big client project, only for it never quite to get over the finishing line or come to fruition? I'll be honest, I've had 3 of them this year. People that I've worked with in the sincere belief they were going to hire me. Heck, they even told me they were going to hire me. They promised they were going to hire me. They even asked for invoices to pay to hire me, only for them to back out for whatever reason at the last minute. Now, I'm not going to talk about anybody publicly because that's not the way it needs to be. But what really got me mad was, in one case, I even saw my stuff and the advice I gave them being offered all over the web, but this time in their name. That's my bad. But let me ask you a question. Are you married to a promotion concept that just isn't working? Are you spending hours upon hours trying to move up the search engine ladder with nothing to show for it, or working for a particular client or a particular funnel or whatever, and there's just nothing to show for it? Here's the lesson. Learn to take the quick victories, draw lines in the sand, and move on. People, like armies, lose wars by fighting difficult, prolonged battles. Battles that leave their resources depleted. So here's the absolute truth. Avoid any task or project or idea that's got the potential to consume large amounts of your time and large amounts of your resources without necessarily yielding a substantial gain. So what's the specific action? Simply this: evaluate everything that you're currently doing Ask yourself if you're spending an inordinate amount of time on stuff that's not yet produced a significant benefit for you in your business. And give a higher priority to those victories that can be won quickly, and then move on to more important things. That's one heck of a way of getting rid of the garbage that's on your desk. I'll put it really bluntly. Stop lying to yourself, because some things are just not going to work. Sometimes it pays to drag things out because you know that down the line you are going to get a better result. But usually, though, it pays just to go for a quick and sure victory that uses up fewer resources, less of your time, less of your money, and certainly less of your emotional stamina. Here's psychological mind control hack number 17, boldness and risk-taking. History proves that more battles are won by making bold moves than by brute force. Now, by bold, I mean having the guts to take the massive action that you need to take. Yesterday, the whole world was watching the US-North Korean summit in Singapore, and it made me think back to the history I studied of the Korean War. There was a day when General Douglas MacArthur took bold, massive action in a crucial point of the war. And by the time the bulk of the US forces had arrived in Korea, after the invasion from the north, all of the existing South Korean and US forces were trapped in what was known as the Busan perimeter. There was a small bit of land surrounding the port city of Busan. Now, the North Korean leader, Kim Il-sung, expected MacArthur to concentrate his forces there in Busan. And he expected him to try and break out of the perimeter because that seemed the only logical move to make from a military point of view. And so Kim Il-sung concentrated most of his North Korean forces around Busan. As I said, it was the logical thing to do. But no one ever accused General MacArthur of being predictable. And so instead of doing the expected thing, he took a big chunk of his forces up to Incheon, just south of Seoul, and nobody would have expected that attack because the geography of the beach makes for an incredibly difficult landing operation. And that took the North Koreans by complete surprise, and MacArthur was able to quickly capture Seoul and cut the North Korean forces in two. So here's the question: why can't we, that's you and I, in our businesses, act as boldly as the great figures in history? Why can't we capture customers in the same way that MacArthur and the Allies captured land? The answer is we can, if we're willing to be fearless in our action. But that's the kicker, you see, our human will, our own psychology. Now, unfortunately, most great business ideas get shot down before they're even written down, and the vast majority of ideas that we toss around in our heads every day, they get squelched by those inner voices of those words of caution. And even those that we do scribble down on a legal pad seldom make it into the actual planning stages. And I get that most new business ventures have got a slim chance of succeeding, but without even an effort, slim becomes zero. And it's the same when it comes to sales. Guys, at least pick up the phone and make the call. So many people would be so much better off, so much more productive if they could get over all the reasons that they tell themselves why they don't pick up the phone, why they don't send that email, why they don't reach out, and why they don't make contact. People who know me well know that one of my favorite phrases is, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. Stop asking permission from other people or even yourself. Don't ask people if something you put together is okay or if it's good enough. Just do it, and you'll find out if it's okay, and the market will surely tell you quickly enough if it's good enough or not. But too many people listen to too many other people and kill their own plans before they ever come to fruition. They imagine ways that they're going to fail, or they listen to all the garbage that everybody else pours into the ears of telling them why they're going to fail, and so they just give up and don't try at all. You know, Microsoft's success hinges on one very bold request made by a man called Bill Gates. When Gates was putting the original deal together with IBM to include his DOS software on every PC they shipped, he asked for one little thing that catalyzed his success. He asked for the exclusive rights to sell upgrades to his software. Now, most of us wouldn't have even thought to ask. If we did think to ask, even fewer of us would have had the bottom to ask. Surely IBM could see the revenue potential Bill Gates, the richest man in the world. So stop spending your time and energy worrying constantly about how to use them. Just because you shares can't be done doesn't mean that you can't be done. Doesn't mean you can't be done. Stop caring about the way you're planning for. And you can the internet will take advantage of freedom because you won't find it in other venues. You have the permission to act boldly, do it, and you say that you can. Now, of course, you need to act ethically, you need to treat people fairly, but for goodness sake, stand up and take your share. Here's the absolute truth. Boldness is all about taking risks. History has consistently shown that great victories are won by people who are willing to act boldly and to ignore the self-doubts and all the doubts of other people. Here's the sales application. Most people are not bold. So bold actions are rarely expected either by your competition or by your potential customers. And that gives those of us who are willing to be bold one huge, great advantage. See, your success in sales and in business is tied to your willingness to act boldly and fearlessly. Here's the specific action. What are the boldest, most exciting marketing plans that have ever crossed your mind? Write them down. Doesn't matter how stupid they sound to other people. Write them down, flesh them out, begin figuring out how they might be carried out. In your planning, never, never, never allow the word can't. Don't let it be an obstacle to what you want to be achieved. And just remember that bold and stupid are not synonyms. You don't need me to explain that, I hope. You can declare freedom from the perception that the cost of doing business is very high. You can be an aggressive and effective internet marketing without wasting all of your resources on costly advertising. For example, scour the internet for free and low-cost services that can help you get visibility for your business. One of the ones that a few of my clients know about, I've been piloting for several businesses, is YouTube. Now, while anybody can throw together a YouTube channel and record a couple of videos and hope for the best, there is a very specific formula which, if followed, will bring an unlimited amount of targeted traffic for your door for free. I don't care what business you're in, what niche you're in, you can generate an unlimited amount of targeted leads for free. And it's real hard to do that with Facebook ads or AdWords. And I'm going to start teaching this YouTube stuff on a done with you basis with select clients from Monday next week. Finally, psychological mind control hack number 18. Motivation is an irreplaceable key to success. I'm going to say that again. Motivation is an irreplaceable key to success. Out of all the 18 mind control hacks I'm giving you, this one is probably up there towards the top of the list. Back in the early 1980s, I was a commission-only direct sales insurance guy. I used to sell insurance products, whether it was for family protection or investment plans or retirement plans or even plans to pay off mortgages. That's what I did for a living. I was commission only. That's the way the world was in England back in the 80s in that business. And life went according to the following model. You prospected, you made some sales appointments, you went on those sales appointments, and you sold somebody something. You earned a commission, and all was well with your world. Now, just a quick aside on prospecting. I remember going to see a guy called Tony Gordon. Now, Tony Gordon back in the 80s was one of the very, very big, high-producing names in the UK life insurance industry. He wrote more business and made more money than just about anybody else. And I called up this guy who lived, and his office was about 150 miles from where I lived. And I called him up and I got him on the phone and I said, please, can I come and talk to you? He said, why? I said, well, I've heard you talk, I've heard you lecture, I've seen what you do. I'd like, maybe I can buy you lunch or dinner, but would you please, if there's any way you consider it, give me an hour or half an hour of your time? He said, sure. And so he gave me a day and a time, and I drove down to Bristol just to meet this guy for 30 minutes, and we had a coffee, I think it was. And I said to him, Tony, what's the secret of your success? You do what I do. You have to prospect. You have to make sales appointments. You're commission only. He says simply this: Friday is the day I make my appointments for the following week. And I never make less than 20 appointments. And sometimes he said, I've been burning the midnight oil in my office on a Friday because I refuse to leave my office until I've got my 20 appointments for the following week. He said, because the day that I go home, having only made 18 or 19 or 17, is the day that I start the slippery slope to oblivion. I never forgot that. It's sort of kind of relevant even today. So the model was, you prospected, you made some sales appointments, you went on the appointments, you sold somebody something, you earned a commission, and all was well. And actually, it's the same model of all business, whether it's large or small, follow today, whether they realize it or not, because even if the biggest of the biggest business, nothing happens until somebody sells something. I don't care what the product is, what the service is. You can be a CPA, you can be a lawyer, you can sell bottled water. Nothing happens in any business, large or small, until somebody sells something. That's why the salespeople are usually the top earners in the business. And I was invariably in those days the top salesman in the branch. And one day I was having a conversation that I never forget. It was a colleague of mine. I only knew him in the work context, not out of work. A guy called Mike said to me, Neil, how come you always outsell everybody else in the branch? How come you always get the biggest check every month? And I turned around to him and I said, let me ask you a question. I said, Mike, what happens in your house if you don't bring home a decent check at the end of the month? Well, he said, it's kind of tough. My wife's a social worker, so we have her income. And I guess we stay in some and we cut back on things like cigarettes and stuff. And one way or another, we grind it out and get by, hoping things will get better next month. I said to him, it's not like that in my house, Mike. If I don't bring home the bacon, my wife, our little baby, and I don't eat. It's as simple as that. So let me repeat what I said a moment ago. Motivation is an irreplaceable key to success. Vietnam War, we talked about this last week. It's a great lesson here. See, the US soldiers were not fighting for their homes and their families. They were fighting because that's what they've been told to do. So their hearts were not in the battle anywhere close to the same way as the Vietnamese. See, the more desperate the opponent, the fiercer the fight. The US soldiers were trying to stay alive until their tour of duty was over and they could go back home. But the North Vietnamese were fighting to keep their country from being controlled by foreigners. They were fighting to protect themselves from likely execution. And that's one heck of a difference in motivation. See, in sales, in business, in life, desire is everything. Fight every battle as if you're running for your life. Keep moving, never ever stop. Well, that's it for now anyway. I'm going to turn the notes from these 3 video presentations into a special report called 18 Psychological Mind Control Hacks for Salesmen. And that report's going to contain not only the notes from the presentations, but also some more unpublished information that I haven't released in these videos. But I'm not just going to give it away. It's going to be available for download in my Patreon channel at the $97 a month level. Now, before you fall off your chairs, I know it's worth every penny of that and significantly more. This is the sort of stuff that I've only previously given to consulting clients at the $5,000 and $7,500 level. But another huge benefit of being a member at that level is that you can book a one call with me for free every month. That means you get to ask your hardest, most frustrating question about your business and marketing and what's going on, and I'll give you the answer to the best of my ability in 60 minutes or less, and you get to do that every month. The link's www.patreon.com/Starship Academy, and I'll put that in the comment section below. And so that's it for this presentation, and so I'll say goodbye for now.